In this lecture, we're going to be taking a look at how we can start animating a running cycle for our fantasy style characters. So to begin this lecture, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually open back up our idle animation that we created in the previous lecture. So I actually saved mine under idle.ase. If we pull this back up, what we'll see is again the same animation that we've already created, where we have a neutral standing position. Then we have a frame where the character's chest expands and his arms widen out to emphasize his breathing in motion. Then we come back to a stationary position and then head into the breathing out animation where the character kind of condenses. So another reason that I've done this kind of animation for the idle state is that we can actually repurpose the majority of this animation into a running cycle. With a running animation, we're doing the same kind of effect where we have the arms swaying out and kind of back in. The head should be bobbing up and down slightly. So the things that we're going to be learning in this lecture are going to be about how we can start to move around these legs and also how we can add some movement into our scene by creating an up and down motion within our animation. Okay, so just like the idle animation, the first and third frame are going to be pretty much untouched. This third frame, we might slightly change the legs just to kind of depend on where the leg is coming from in the last frame. So moving over to the second frame here, where we have the arms kind of widening out, what we're going to do is we're going to change around the leg position. So the first thing I want to do is extend this front leg backwards. So we're going to widen out the leg and just shoot over the pants and feet over to the left side, just deleting some of these extra pixels here and fixing over the outline. And now we're going to make a slight adjustment, and I'm actually going to grab this entire leg and move it up 1 pixel. Then we can dot in this inside pixel to the right of the knee, and just slightly cleaning up some of these pixels here. We're going to extend the highlight to highlight over all of the knee and the front of the shin. And that's going to be the diagonal facing back leg. Now for the front leg, all we need to do is just to push this entire leg up 1 pixel and to the right 1 pixel. And then we can just add 2 pixels on the top of the knee and finish off this outline before coming back to this front leg or the leg on the left and just slightly adjusting the actual foot orientation. I found that when the foot was on a diagonal, it didn't really look like a foot, so I'm flattening out the foot back to its original position. And there you go. That's the finished main running sprite for your animation. And honestly, there's not a whole lot that we really need to do other than that, just because we already have the arms swinging out. We have the chest already coming up. So a lot of the movement is already there in our frame. And so if we come back to this first frame here, then we go to the second frame, we'll notice quite a bit of movement. It looks almost as if he's jumping or slightly in the air, just because we have pushed this front leg up where the knee is raised and this back leg is shooting out behind the character. So quite a bit of movement here. Then we return back to this new state, but what we'll notice is we want to kind of start to transition this. So what I can do is I can actually just move this entire leg forward just to slightly change the actual position of our leg. And we can just delete some of these extra pixels here. And now we can just widen out this entire back leg over 1 pixel to the left and just delete all the unnecessary pixels that we have kind of shifted this entire canvas over. And there we go. Now that leg is moved in as well. So we have some slight movement and a slight change in between our frames. So if we want to get a little bit more creative, we could keep our character like this. However, there's still a lot of the same exact pixel formations between frame 1 and frame 3. And so if we want to differentiate these a little bit more, what we can do is just select over everything right up to that knee, and we can move this entire sprite over to the left. And so what's going to happen is now we're creating more animation and more kind of differentiation between each frame. So if we look at frame 1 compared to frame 3, we can notice that there's quite a bit of a difference. We're kind of moving around the actual head and kind of orientation of the character. And so coming to this last frame here, again, we do want to scrunch the player in, but we are going to create more of a bobbing type of frame when this animation is finished, where we are kind of moving up and down each frame. So on frame 2, our character is moving up. And so on frame 4, our character should also be in the air. So we'll start by literally just selecting this entire character, and we're going to move him up 1 pixel, or honestly, even 2 pixels, just because we want to exaggerate this motion. So move him up 2 pixels, and now I'm just going to slightly change around his leg position to match where this character's legs should actually be to complete our run cycle. All right, so to begin, we will extend this back leg back a pixel, and then we're just going to move this front leg over 2 pixels and start just kind of readjusting some of these pixels here to give the knee an effect as if it is shooting forward. We'll continue to kind of refine here, just kind of adding in a little bit of the back leg, but I do think that we need more movement in this. So coming back to this front leg, I'm going to move it a pixel to the right and a pixel up, and slightly, again, adjusting the outline here. But I do think we need to extend this 1 pixel to the right. So we're going to extend this entire leg over, and deleting any unnecessary outline pixels that we don't need. We now have a finished proper leg in the front, and now we can start working on the back leg a bit more. So I'm going to actually push the entire back leg in shadow behind the front leg, and we can just kind of use the proportions from the front leg to simulate the back leg. So something like this might be pretty appropriate, but the next thing we need to do is actually change the orientation of the hands. So I actually want to have this hand facing forward, and so we're kind of actually pushing the highlight in the front right instead of the back left. And then we're just going to remove some of the arm in the back as we want to shoot it even further back than the sprite in our idle. So seeing less of the back arm. Okay, awesome. So now we have our finished frame where we have pushed in our hands a little bit more. So the back arm is pushed more over into the inside of the body, and we've actually flipped the orientation of this front glove to show as if it is moving forward towards where the character is running. Then as far as the legs go, we have the front leg that is actually front and crossed over the entire body, and the back leg is now pushed in behind, and we've just shaded all of the color so that we're not seeing any kind of highlights because the leg is completely back and outside of the light source. So that is going to be how we finish off our character's animation. And so if we play this real quick, we'll see that we actually have something that resembles a running animation. And really all we're doing here is, again, breaking down each frame. We have our first frame, which is our stationary frame. Then we have our second frame where our character is moving out. His legs are kind of pushing out on either side. His arms are flailing out. Then we return back to the floor where our character has, again, a slightly different orientation from the first frame, but we are now back on the stationary ground. And again, back into the air where a character has some height, but now he's scrunched in a little bit and his hands and legs are now coming back to center. So that's really all there is to creating a running animation. I basically did the exact same thing that I did in the last lecture where I took a base character, this time using the archer as an example again, and just kind of fine-tuned around some of the pieces. So I started with the head as a base to retexture my character hood and design. And then I went in and filled in the rest of the colors and slightly changed around whatever needed to be changed. For example, the gloves are a different shape, so I had to fine tune the gloves and get rid of some accessories like the belt. But yeah, very straightforward. Really all we're doing is just kind of recoloring around some of the parts and adding on any kind of accessories like the hood that we have for our specific character that we're creating. Very simple stuff, but yeah, that's pretty much how customization goes. I really hope you learned a thing or two about creating a running animation using effects like translation, where we're moving the entire image to help portray your animation. But again, this is a very important lecture that a lot of people really need help with. So I hope you learned some new tricks on creating a running animation.